So welcome, Doug, to the Pursuit of Peace podcast. How you doing? Welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me along.
Yeah, it's good to be in the midst. We're recording this on a Monday. Is this a manic Monday or a chilled Monday?
Yeah, I think every Monday since I was 16 has been pretty manic.
Wow.
You know, being involved in a restaurant company, it's sort of mopping up the end of the week and then sort of proactively planning the next 7 days. So yeah, it's a very much a live day.
Yeah, it's a live day. Okay, well, we're going to go from live and we're going to have more life in this conversation. And I think I always find sitting in the studio, it's nice to be able to just take a breather and go, I actually feel more at peace after every conversation as well. So you're welcome to this.
Yeah, it's very calm and very therapeutic. So, you know, it's a welcome break from my Mondays.
Yeah. Well, it's great to have you with us. So the way we love to talk about start every podcast is by giving, we say, the guests the flowers. So we're just going to shower you with flowers and we're going to let people who are listening and watching the ability to understand a bit about your life, and as we'll go into it more. So you can correct me if I get the wrong numbers, or I put a 6 where there should be a 1, or as we go through. So Doug, you are the CEO of a franchise restaurant company that operates 26 McDonald's restaurants across the West Midlands.
Yeah, indeed.
So were you born in the West Midlands as well?
Yeah, I was born in Bromsgrove, actually.
So you are born and bred West Midlands.
Yeah, a very strange start to life. You know, I was born, abandoned, a couple of days old, and adopted at a week old.
Wow.
So yeah, a pretty interesting start to life.
It's a really powerful. Already straight away, this is just the intro, and I'm already excited to go more into that journey as we journey through. So from those humble beginnings, you began your career at McDonald's the day before you left school in 1981.
Yeah, indeed.
Wow. You then became a franchisee in 2002.
Yeah, 21 years later, a lot of hard work, and a lot of early starts and late finishes.
Wow. And so anyone who's listening, what does a franchisee actually mean?
A franchisee is somebody who owns and operates a part of a brand. Amazing. So in my case, you know, you own and operate a restaurant as part of the global McDonald's brand.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Thank you for that. So by 2016, you're a recipient of the Fred L. Turner Golden Award, which recognizes the best McDonald's franchisees in their global system, i.e. in the world.
Yeah, it's one of those moments, you know, when the letter came, you stop and it's one of those wow moments.
Yeah.
You know, you never kind of see it yourself, but to sort of be selected as one of the best franchisees out of 36 or 37,000 restaurants globally.
Gosh.
Yeah, it was a lovely moment for myself and more importantly for everyone who works for me.
Wow, amazing, from all over the globe. Wow. But the amazing thing about your life is, and one of the reasons we're really passionate to have you on this podcast, is you're dedicated to a lot of time for charity work.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about it in a little while, but, you know, my headline's always been to try and use my business success as a force for good to help others less fortunate.
Wow, amazing. And we're going to talk about it a bit more later on, but your inspiration comes from being hospitalized at nearly the age of around 20. But actually that never stopped you because of all the things that you've talked about here and how you even became chairman of the Ronald McDonald House in Birmingham for 6 years, which was a charity that provided a home away from home for charities whilst their children were being treated in the Birmingham Children's Hospital. Wow, that's an amazing feat.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty special part of my life. And, you know, maybe talk about it later on, but we were instrumental in setting up a home away from home for families and their siblings. But, yeah, we were part of the fundraising journey and we're the catalyst of getting it going, really.
Wow, it's amazing. There's so much. I can tell people that are listening are going to be watching, they're already inspired, I'm sure, but wanting to go deeper pretty soon. So you are currently the patron and director of the Greater Birmingham Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, patron of Greater Birmingham Chamber of Commerce, which is in essence a business club. You know, it's a not-for-profit organisation, and as business owners, men and women, we try and leverage all of our skills and create solutions. So I suppose the 3 words we would use are connect, support, and grow.
Amazing. And you help little organizations like Guardian Ballers, like helping us to reach across the West Midlands with youth mental health and different things, and help our businesses, I guess, grow and survive as well.
Yeah, I think, one of the things you do as you get older, that you want to try and, nurture the next tranche of talent. You want to encourage women and men into business. And so, one of the things I spend a lot of my spare time doing is mentoring young people, whether they're at the start of their journey or they've just hit a wall or they just need that next 1% to get them going.
Wow, no, thanks for that. And as we come into close with this intro, but we know it's not all the things we could have shared about your journey. You've had some awards over recent years as well. From 2019, you were awarded the honorary doctorate from Birmingham City University and named the regional EY Entrepreneur of the Year. In 2022, you were awarded a further honorary doctorate by Aston University. And as well as your role, and we'll talk about it more, as the High Sheriff of the West Midlands at the moment, you were also awarded an MBE in the Queen's Birthday Honours in 2022. I'm imagining that was a similar feeling to that when you opened that letter from the McDonald's Global Award.
Yeah, I mean, there is no greater honour than from, Her Majesty the Queen. And, it made it very, very special that it was, unfortunately, her last ever honours list.
Yeah, wow.
So to get that for services to business and my philanthropic work, charity work in the West Midlands was very special. And then a few weeks later, the Queen had even picked me to go to the Queen's state funeral.
Wow.
So that was a very, very, very special time.
Yeah, wow. No, it's a real honor, and we're honored for you to be in this studio with us. And in case people don't know, the way I first met you and we got connected was literally maybe a month ago or 6 weeks ago at the SmartWorks Birmingham event. And I remember hearing you do the keynote talk and going, wow, this is an inspirational man.
Thank you.
And when we were thinking of recording season 2, we went, actually, I would love if we could have someone like Doug Wright, let alone yourself. And it's a real honor for us to be in this space, because not just because of your CV and going, oh, Doug has loads of medals and stars, but actually because of your heart to serve, organizations like Guardian Borders, which is, this podcast is connected to. So thank you.
No, it was wonderful. It was a lovely evening where we met you. And, SmartWorks, great organization that are in essence there for women who have been unable, had a tough time in their lives for whatever reason. But SmartWorks brings you in, coaches you, and then dresses you. Yeah. So not only does it give you the skill sets to go and get a job, but it also makes you look great and gives you outfits. So very, very dear to my heart, SmartWorks.
Yeah, and I remember that night, the one word, which I was literally speaking to someone about this yesterday, is I remember they said the one thing they want to do is they want to give women confidence.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so important that, all of us in life will have a bump along the road, but this is an organisation that works assiduously, tirelessly to try and restore confidence, to deal with the issues on the periphery and to bring you in. And, their success rate is just phenomenal. I think over 76% of people get a job.
That's amazing.
Which is, from a flat battery, from a difficult start, that start alone, all the guys and girls, everyone at SmartWorks should be so proud of.
Yeah, no, that's a stat I remember. Of every stat I heard that night, I was like, they have this model, and in my head I had like 75%, so it was only 1% off. It works. The model works. Yeah. So it's amazing. But hey, we're gonna get rolling then. So we call this next little segment the warm up. Okay. So, what's your favorite sport, by the way?
Football.
Okay, we'll let you. It's close to basketball, so we'll let you off. Guardian Borders, we do like football as well, and I'm a football fan. But so we got a little warm up before the main match kicks off.
Okay.
So we call this bucket, bin, or bargain.
Yep.
Okay, so bucket comes from in basketball, because at Guardian Borders we use a lot of basketball. If you shoot a basket in basketball and it goes in, a bucket.
Yep.
Okay, and back in the day when basketball first started, they literally would have used buckets.
Sure.
Okay. The next one is bin. So if I give you an option, you're like, actually, I'm not having this thing, throw it in the bin, it's rubbish. You're going to tell me it's a bin. Next one is bargain. So you're only doing it if it's cheap. You're not going to invest much money in it. Okay.
So I got it. 3 Bs.
3 Bs. There you go.
Bucket, bin, or bargain.
You got it. Okay, let's roll. So first one is holiday. Holiday in St. Kitts in the Caribbean.
Bucket.
Bucket. Have you ever been?
Yes.
And you would go back and spend big money?
Yeah, I think it's really, really, really vital that occasionally you stop and treat yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say that you should do it all the time, but 50th birthday, for instance, we all headed out to Barbados.
Amazing.
And had a very special. I've got 5 kids.
Wow.
So they're all still subscribed to daddy.com.
Subscribed, I like that.
So it was a pretty expensive trip.
Just Doug Wright for some people.
No, so now family time is incredibly special.
Yeah, wow. So we can continue this conversation now because my dad's family are from St. Kitts, so we can be friends.
Good.
We can carry on. Yeah, it's I remember actually at SmartWorks we were talking briefly and we were talking about the Caribbean because literally about 15 months ago I was in St. Kitts and then we flew to Barbados also. Yep. So beautiful place. If anyone listening, they've never been to Caribbean, they need to taste the paradise, right?
Yeah, I think if you sort of draw a comparison with the space we're in today, the Caribbean is the ultimate place to chill and to re-find yourself and to hear your own brain tick and just really, really, really relax.
No, 100%. I think in our Western society, things can be so fast, right?
Yeah.
We talk about our phones. It's nice to record a podcast and not be on your phone, but actually to be in a space where you've got ocean breeze and sunshine, it makes a big difference. And slower tempo, I think. Okay, next one. Food. Little side curveball here. Kale. Are you a kale fan? I think it's part of the spinach family. Someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but
yes.
Kale.
Bucket.
Yeah, bucket. You're gonna go to a supermarket, spend even if it's expensive.
Yeah, I love things like kale, spinach. I usually drink a smoothie every morning about 6 o'clock.
Green one?
Yeah, always.
Nice. Okay, wow, I'm impressed. Okay, drink. Next one. This can flick people different ways. Sparkling water. Bucket, bin, or bargain?
Bucket.
Bucket. Okay, so if you're going for, you're going to choose sparkling over still?
Yeah, in terms of for me, I don't drink a lot of alcohol, so it's quite a nice variant on drinking water. Okay. So yes, I would buy a bottle of sparkling water. Okay.
See, this is where I have to put that one in the bin.
Yep.
When I get the taste buds or I could go for a lemonade, but when it's sparkling, sometimes it just confuses my brain.
Yeah.
But we're okay. We'll go tonight. I'll get a lemonade. You get the sparkling water. We'll be okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Next one. Clothing, bow tie.
Bin.
In the bin.
Yeah.
Never, as in never, or if it was really, really smart, you'd always go tie.
No, bow ties really suit people. You either, it's very Marmite about bow ties. So if I'm going to a very, very beautiful occasion, I'll wear a bow tie. But the bin, because it wouldn't be my first choice.
Yeah.
It wouldn't get in my first pick.
Yeah, I get it. So tell me about what you're wearing right now around your neck. And for anyone listening, describe what you've got around your neck.
Yeah, I've got a tailored shirt on, a Gucci tie, and then I've got my High Sheriff medal on.
High Sheriff medal. So to someone who's High Sheriff medal, they've never heard that phrase before in their life. Why have you got it and what is it?
So when I got the letter from the King saying for 1 year I was going to be appointed by the King to become a High Sheriff, straight away I had to Google it and to find out what a High Sheriff is. Yeah. And it emanates back from Saxon times. And in Saxon times, we would actually have been the law enforcer and would have ridden around on a horse, levying fines. So it started then. Fast forward to today's, it's a mix of civic events, ceremonial and charitable events. So we represent the King and actually are the highest judicial officer in the county, which means we work with courts, magistrates, judges, and in essence champion the emergency services, visit prisons, and just add a little bit of value, in terms of you go out as I said, there's a mix of three different things. But, you know, for me, I've really wanted to go after and visit organizations that are driving social cohesion or organizations that are working to make our world, i.e. our county, a better and safer place. So that could be CICs, individuals.
Like Guardian Borders, yeah.
But yeah, lots of different organisations. But I think for someone who's always lived in the West Midlands, that I feel deeply honoured to have had this role for a year and I'm really proud of my community outreach. And I suppose I've had a really good forensic look under the bonnet of the West Midlands. And what you realise is there are so many amazing people who are doing fabulous stuff for our community in our backyard. And often communities are creating solutions where, you know, funding's dried up. There wasn't the same help from the local authority. We live in an exceptional place. And at times young people get bad press. But let me tell you, there are so many great young women and men doing fabulous stuff, which is ultimately benefiting us all.
Well, and I want to thank you on behalf of many organizations because I'm encouraged sitting here. I know how busy your schedule was before recording this this recording right now, and will be afterwards, and that you've taken time. And I often say, you know where someone's heart is by the treasure how they share their treasure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really get myself, and you know, I've done okay from a difficult start, but I think it's incumbent if you get a role like this that you do it justice, and you get out there 7 days a week, and you meet people, you connect people, and you try and engineer solutions. And you know, when you work for the King for 1 year as the High Sheriff of the West Midlands, it means that we've got very good communication channels and we can help to share your story. A part of being here today is, yes, the podcast, but also we can share it across and let everyone know the inspiring work you're doing. And if someone needs some help, we're signposting them your way.
Yeah, no, really appreciate that, Doug. Thank you so much. And yeah, it's a real honor. I'll just see. Let me get it. I'll just show right here for anyone on YouTube. You got your how would you call this?
So that is the court dress.
Okay.
So that is still the same outfit from Saxon times.
Wow.
And you know, in terms of when I saw it on the internet, the first thing was, gosh, I bet I don't have to wear that now. But you do.
Yeah,
you know, in
amazing.
terms of you use it when you visit courts, generally churches, cathedrals.
Wow.
And there'll be other occasions where people actually ask if you can wear it. So I've even enjoyed wearing it. I've worn it with pride.
Yeah.
You know, it's the badge of honor.
Gosh, it's amazing. So thank you so much for bringing that so we can see that also. So the last two things I'm going to share with you then of our bucket, bin and bargain. One of them, I imagine people who are busy like yourself may use these a lot, but I don't know if you find them helpful. For health, eye masks. You know, you can either get them some strips or some beauty treatment eye masks. Have you ever gone there? Bucket, bin or bargain?
Bucket.
I can imagine a busy man like yourself. Those things are helpful, or could be.
Yeah,
helpful.
you look, anything that gives you that 1%, it makes you feel a bit better. It makes you look a bit better.
Yeah.
You know, the days are long.
Yeah.
You know, they roll from one to another. So that a little bit of, you know, self TLC never goes amiss.
I'm with you. I've had a few on the episodes. I've talked about men with pedicures, you know, looking after your feet. So I'm with you. I'm team men health. And final one then, a little bit of a out there, an experience, pottery classes.
Gosh, if you saw how poor I was at art school, that would have to be straight in the bin.
Yeah, straight in the bin.
You know, I can tell you all the great things that I'm good at today, but when it comes to art, craft, and DIY, you would put me in the bin.
Okay, leave it to someone else's strengths, yeah?
Yeah, so that one's planted in the bin.
Amazing. Awesome. Okay, so we've done a little warm-up, bucket, bin or bargain. Let's get to the main questions. Let's get into it. First question, quite a big one, but we like to ask people a lot. What does peace mean to you?
Gosh, peace has been redefined by me this year. You know, I always thought I knew what peace was or should be, but since having this societal role for a year, I've seen so much good in our community. So peace to me means helping other people and channeling all your energy and time into looking after people, because if we can find out about people we live with, we work with, maybe with different cultural, religious, what they eat, we just need to channel our energy into making our world, our community far more harmonious. So for me, it's about those little things you can do, whether to it's people you don't know, invite them in for some food perhaps, go and do their shopping, give them a lift to the hospital. There's lots of things that don't cost big pots of money, but will make a huge difference to people's lives. So be kind, be respectful, and be charitable, because we're better as one. And that's where we need to get to.
Wow, that's powerful. And you just said we're better as one. And we have a little quote here from this episode around Mother Teresa, who was someone who epitomized loving others so well. And her quote about peace is simple as this. She says, "Peace begins with a smile."
Yeah.
So Mother Teresa said, "Peace begins with a smile." When you consider all the things you just shared about peace, what does that quote stir within you?
Well, listen, you go anywhere and it doesn't cost a thing, but if somebody smiles, it's almost like saying, welcome to our world. You're welcome. Step in. And, for somebody who's worked in the hospitality industry for nearly 44 years, you cannot give anyone a greater gift than a smile when they greet you.
Yeah.
Even the young lady who met me on the door downstairs today, she was beaming, broad smile. And straight away, any nerves or worry dissipates.
Yeah.
So it helps you feel at ease.
Amazing. Great job. It's awesome. Thankful for the production team and everyone in our world. So I'm just really intrigued when we look at peace and the journey of peace, because you talk about, being the High Sheriff of the West Midlands. That's an amazing honor. But I think for a lot of people as business leaders, like for me with Guardian Ballers, we reach young people with their mental health, and we use basketball and other community impact opportunities where young people will literally volunteer and have the opportunity to volunteer. But for me, I'm often going on this journey of realizing I'm a business leader. To be honest, in my life, I think I started off as a volunteer in everything. And you have to transition from being a volunteer to having a business leader mindset and realize that I need to keep this business alive. But for you, you now have 26 franchises, McDonald's in the West Midlands. How is it as a business leader, journey in peace and building a business whilst journey in peace?
Yeah, running a business is hard work, but I think very early on, I worked for the restaurant company, the corporation, for 21 years. And it was almost like 21 years when you have a good look round and work out how you would do it differently. So, for me, love being a company employee. But ultimately, I wanted to become a business owner. And I thought, what other business? I didn't know anything else, so I thought I would love to become a McDonald's franchisee.
Yep.
And very early on, I realized that if we were going to scale up and get to our dream of owning 2 restaurants,
Yep.
that we were going to have to make sure that people were at the heart of everything we did.
Yep.
And so I suppose what we wanted to do was we wanted to put the corporate rule book in the background.
Yep.
And we wanted to create a culture. Now, in 2002, not many people had heard of the word culture.
Yep.
So what we were trying to do was create a work environment where people felt valued and special.
Yeah.
And what we really did, we thought about everyone isn't a number. Everyone's got a name. And so very early on, things happened to us where people came in and the corporation or any other big corporation would have said, why would we? But on the headline we wanted to run with, we wanted it to reflect, treat people the way you wanted to be treated yourself. So that was important.
Yeah.
So we needed to redefine. So when people came in, someone comes in and said, like, I can't do full-time work anymore because my partner's left or my partner's ill or whatever, we decided we were going to start every conversation with these people. Why wouldn't we? And that was very different.
It's inclusive. It's an inclusive question.
Yeah. So someone said, I'm having a baby. I can't come back after 10 months or a year. So I said, when can you come back? She said, oh, in about 5 years. So I took a deep breath and I thought, a corporate rule book would say probably no.
Move on to just someone else, the next person.
But I thought, why wouldn't we? Because it means that in 5 years' time she'd return. And you know what? It was one of those light bulb moments because she came back. She's still with us now. But more importantly, we realized the power of making decisions that are for people and are totally people-centric. And, you know, that lucky moment where we said yes has led to being able to be very, very non-formulaic. So we will do things which perhaps other people wouldn't do. And, you know, you never do it for payback, but the payback is that people are pretty loyal to you when you go down and do those sort of things. People never forget.
Yeah, the time that you put the person before performance.
More the person before the rule book. So ultimately, you know, we wanted to, this lady could have gone and worked for anybody 5 years later, but we retained all her skills. And while she was a mum, she came back with even more life skills, because what's harder than bringing up children?
Yeah, it's true. And some people say, what's more important, you know? Putting your family first. A lot of people in business will often have that eureka moment where they've been sewing in so much into their business, and it could be because of a tragedy. It could be just because they look in the mirror and go, wow, actually my family comes before the finance of my business and all these different things. And I think for me as a business leader, as I journey, I'm forever going, where are my priorities in this journey, in this pursuit of peace, you know? And I guess for you, as you talked about mentoring, you know, young entrepreneurs and business leaders, do you find when thinking of the peace dynamic, is there anything that you often find yourself saying again and again to young entrepreneurs or business leaders, which will help them journey to more peace?
Yeah, I think the thing I always say, which has a beautiful correlation to peace, is, and they're quite polar opposites, but if you're going to go into business, you have to be very, very passionate. Now, how does passionate meet peace? Very simply, if you're passionate about something, you believe in it, ultimately you're going to be far happier in your work, and that's going to take you on the road to peace. So don't go into business as a young woman, young man, unless you're going to be deeply passionate about what you could potentially do for the rest of your life.
Yeah, wow. I receive that, and I think I really believe it as well. I sit here now as a founder and CEO of Guardian Borders. I remember the time we just had a vision, and when you see then the first young person that's impacted, and they go, "Thank you for impacting my mental health and my life." I remember this moment we launched Guardian Borders, in essence coming out of the lockdown to help young people with their mental health. And I remember sitting on a stage, and we had a movie called Guardian Borders Life Stories, and this young man, we can publicly say his name because he shared it in front of everyone, young Mason. And I remember, I'll never forget that moment where he went, "Thank you, Guardian Borders. I was really struggling coming out of lockdown, and I think he said something along the lines of, you saved my life, like you helped my life." And I go, wow, that makes it all worth it. All the grind, all the challenges, because I'm passionate about it, yes, but then I'm seeing the people being impacted too. It's so special. But what I'm really interested about, and I'm sure lots of people will be interested about, is your journey. How did Doug Wright MBE become so passionate about charitable work when actually you could have just gone your life earning lots of money, going on holidays to Barbados, but actually you wanted to launch the Ronald McDonald Hospital, and you do all these amazing charitable things. And you talked previously at the beginning around the age of 20, something significant that happened to you, and how that sent, I've heard you say a speech around how that impacted the rest of your life. So yeah, tell us about that time in your life when you were 20 years old, and how that impacted the way that you see life now.
Yeah, I mean, my mum and dad were pretty disappointed when I failed all my O levels. So
GCSEs to some people who are younger.
yeah,
Like that.
yeah. So they were pretty disappointed, and obviously, you know, they were the people who adopted me. They were devout teachers, so education mattered. Nothing else mattered. So I did start to do okay. You know, I started with the toilet brush. I was the toilet cleaner at McDonald's the day before I left school. I progressed up to staff trainer, shift leader. And at the age of 20, you know, I was starting to go from zero to hero in mum's eyes, because I became the corporation's youngest ever restaurant manager in Oxford, and I was 20.
Wow.
So, you know, I was earning the grand sum of £7,000 a year. But I was, believe it or not, in charge of a big restaurant in Oxford with 150 staff. And like, you know, life felt pretty good. And in a moment, my life went from being pretty good to awful. So routine night out, and was involved in a huge, significant car crash. 14 hours to cut me out of the debris. When we got me out of the debris, realised that I'd from just under my chin was partially paralysed. And so all I could move was the top half of my body, but from sort of neck downwards, I was paralysed.
Couldn't move your hands, couldn't use
Nothing,
your feet.
nothing at all. And like even today, you know, this hand doesn't go in. You know, that I'm got no feeling on the left-hand side of my body. So my mum was distraught, and, you know, hard to believe, but I was mum's golden child because she couldn't have children. So she came straight to the hospital in a very sort of harrowing 48 hours that, you know, told that I would never, ever walk again by the consultant. Now had gone from a hospital in Oxford and taken to a place in Aylesbury, very special place called Stoke Mandeville Spinal Centre. And obviously the clue's in the name. That's where anybody with a severe spinal injury goes. So we were there, and I was sort of bedridden for about 5 months. Mum used to lie on the floor every night. We were chronically poor. She couldn't afford to travel 100 miles home every night. And I kind of felt sadder, not about myself, really, that the fact that my mum, who was a lot older, because I was adopted, she struggled to lie on the floor for months and months and months.
So for 5 months, you lay in bed.
Yeah, I couldn't move, but you know, she was there. You know,
and she lay and just stayed alongside.
Yeah,
you. Wow.
And there was no other facility. So I kind of realised that we were in uppercase in a bit of a mess here. But fortunately, I hadn't completely severed the spinal cord, so they did expect me to make a recovery. Obviously, because the body and the spine was in such shock, they didn't know to what extent I would recover. Yeah. But through the help of many people at the hospital, many volunteers, there you go, volunteers again, physiotherapists, occupational therapists, people to take me home and, you know, transport, voluntary lifts, I got better. I got out of a wheelchair, you know, started to recover, and went back to work for corporate McDonald's. Wasn't fit enough to work in a restaurant. So, you know, they created a job for me in Sutton Coldfield, where I did a bit of customer services and worked in about 6 or 7 other departments from sort of 1986 to 2001. But it was a tough period of my life. But it was definitely the moment when I realised that, let's be blunt, none of us ever know when we will need the help of a charity.
Yeah, wow.
And that was, so many charities stepped forward and helped me. So I kind of realised that the road to recovery was priority number 1. But number 2 was never forget what people did for myself and my family. You know, the recovery would not even have been anywhere close as it was. So that was always banked up there.
And you're forever paying it forward.
Yeah, so what happened was applied to become a McDonald's franchisee. I hadn't really thought it out particularly well. I had a burning desire to run a business, but I only had £612. I'm not even sure what the significance of the £12 was,
Yeah.
but had a minimum stake. But McDonald's backed me and gave me a franchise.
Wow.
And straight away, absolutely loved being an owner operator of the brand that I'd always loved. I'd had to resign, set up a limited company, was the very proud employer of 33 employees. And it was rough. It's the roads aren't paved with gold when you become a businessman or a businesswoman. There's a lot of hard yards along the way. So the first few years were pretty tough, but we just made sure that we always made the right decision by our employees.
Yep.
And went back to something I talked about earlier, make sure people feel valued and special in their work.
Amazing.
So as the franchise empire began to grow, we got to 2 restaurants. And then we always knew, or I always knew, that as an individual, I would love to be a very small part of creating a Ronald McDonald House.
Yep.
For those of you who don't know what it is, simply it's a home away from home. And this isn't, a great advert for it, but ultimately it's the place that no parent ever wants to be.
It's true.
Because if you're staying in a Ronald McDonald House, that means your child or children are very poorly. These Ronald McDonald houses are internationally located around the world, but they're there to provide a home away from home for families and their siblings. So I was a very small part of raising a significant amount of money. I think about £9.6 million we raised.
Wow.
That was down
£9.6
million pounds. This building was next to, and is still next to, the Birmingham Children's Hospital. And it was there because the great people in America gave us grants, funding. They helped us. I mean, how many people helped us? We literally will be indebted to most of the West Midlands.
Wow.
Whether it's schools, mums clubs, business clubs, football clubs, professional sports, women, men. They all put into the pot in some way.
And this is crazy for me hearing this, because I remember being a young man and walking into a McDonald's. I was born and bred in Cardiff, and I remember you had the checkout or the till, wherever people want to call it, and on the side there'd often be I remember a round dome with a little hole at the top, and
I'd put your pennies.
I'd buy my Big Mac or whatever, and it'd be this much, 99 pence, and I might have that 1p and just put it in there and seal it, go around that little dome.
Yeah, I don't know where it goes.
You don't know where it goes. But now I'm sat here hearing about how you've invested into something where even as a young man, I was just putting pennies.
So, all we did was use our business collective, whether it's our supply chain, employees. I mean, so many people helped us. And we opened the Ronald McDonald House in November 2009. We'll always be deeply indebted to Ronald McDonald Charities in America, because they helped us with lots of money, lots of grants. And we got there. So we opened in November 2009, and we're very proud that we've had over 16,500 families stay.
That's incredible.
Average stay 4 months, longest stay in Birmingham about 2.5 years. And somehow I went from very keen, but in brackets, useless fundraiser to the chairman of the house in Birmingham. So to be able to say that I was a small part of something that has made a difference to over 16,500 families is probably right up there as my number one feat.
Wow, no, that's amazing. I'm sure there could be people listening to this right now that have you benefited and been blessed by that. And I'm sure there'll be families where maybe one day they might go, actually, I can remember hearing about Doug and how important that was to him, and their hearts will be warm, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think the important thing is that when you think about Ronald McDonald House Charities, never think about Doug. Think about all the great volunteers, all the people who work there, businessmen and businesswomen. It's pretty important that we use our collective success.
No,
to help charities. But, you know, personally, my wife and I, our business, we probably support about 20 charities across the West Midlands all the time. So, you know, charity is woven into our DNA. And it was probably the moment where, I mean, when you're young, you never think, why do I need to do anything? I'll never need a charity. But, you know, mine was a spectacular accident. But, you know, I will never, ever, ever be able to repay all the people who helped us.
Yeah, well, and I just honor you as an humble man in that. And I just think about your story, and other people that are of faith would probably say your story is a miracle of how you went from this place of being paralyzed to be able to walk again and you know.
Yeah, I was so lucky, though, that I was just partially paralyzed because, you know, I was probably a couple of hairs widths away from severing the spinal cord, and then there is no comeback, you know, but so, you know, by the grace of God, really.
So it's powerful. And before we come to the end of the podcast, we love to do a self-care piece, and this is a great way to get onto it. The one that the podcast team brought together for today is count your blessings. So we're literally going to use our hands. We'll maybe use one hand, and there's 5 fingers on one hand. You know, other people might want to use their hands, both hands and their toes. But we're just going to go back and forth and think about something that we'd call a blessing that we're grateful for. And the reason we do this in the self-care piece is, you know, this podcast is empowered by Guardian Ballers and the young people we reach. And we're ultimately at the core of everything Guardian Ballers does. We're looking to help people to arrive at a greater sense of peace through better mental health in their lives and whatever that looks like to them. So this is a little bit, we're going to help ourselves and help listeners and people watching. So I'll go first, and then we'll bounce back to you. So my first finger, my first blessing I'm going to count is very, very much so for this conversation, because I've been inspired today, and I've been challenged to remember the power of my passion behind all that I do, even when it's hard. So my first blessing is I'm thankful for this conversation.
Okay, so mine will be absolutely that somebody believed in me at 16, that I was completely unemployable, late, unreliable, had not met an iron, had not really understood about, you know, tidying your bedroom, pretty useless son. But somebody believed in me and welcomed me into their world. Nobody had ever heard of McDonald's back in 1981. But why I loved it was because there were no knives and forks. You know, it was a completely different dynamic. In 1981, believe it or not, you used to eat out twice a year, on your mum's birthday and your birthday.
Wow.
You know, restaurants didn't open till 11 or 12. There were no coffee stops. There were no breakfasts, nothing like that.
Gosh.
So my first blessing, and I forevermore, it's a massive one. Thank you, McDonald's, for giving me a job at 16, because nobody else has ever stopped and thought about that. So that was my real first blessing.
My second one I'm going to talk about is adoption, the power of adoption. My sister was adopted 1.5 years old. She was born in London, and then she came home to Cardiff in Wales with us. So my second blessing I'm going to count today is for my sister and the power of adoption, which I know is a part of your story as well.
Yep. Number 2 for me would be my mom and dad. And what I mean by that is the people who adopted me. You know, so I was going to say family, but drilling down a level, 2 people. And it's a crazy story. You know, they drove down from Glasgow and picked me. Wow. And they came down from Scotland because in 1964, the adoption laws were way simpler. So that's, you know, obviously these are not sequenced in order, but my mom and dad, sadly, they never ever really saw my business or my charity work, and they've been dead 12 years ago. My mom was so angry, disappointed, and chased me around the house when I got 1 O-level, or you call it GCSE. 1 GCSE. Yeah. But hopefully now she's smiling that, you know, I've got onto the right track. So number 1, job. Number 2, family.
Right. Number 3, I'm going to say the value of vision. When I about 5, 6 years ago when I first had the thought around Guardian Borders even being a thing, I didn't think I'd sit in a studio speaking to you with an organization that reaches 1,600 young people every year. So I'm grateful for the value of vision and how other people show me that, Kieran, if you have vision, other people will walk with you in it. So my third one is I'm thankful for the value of vision. Yeah.
Yeah, I think my third one will be I'm thankful for sport.
Yes.
Now, sport, there is so much synergy between sport and business. And, in terms of if you can pick up a ball or kick a ball or whatever sport floats your boat, there is a lot of synergy of then bringing into your work life. So when you haven't got formal qualifications, and if some of you are sitting here and it's really getting you down, then it's affecting your mental health. There'll be so many good people at sport, and sport will be able to have transferable skills into work and life. So if you're good at sport or enjoy sport, that will be a real enabler going forwards. So number one, work. Number two, family. Number three, sport.
Amazing. And you know what? I'm just going to finish with one final one. I'm not going to go through all 5 fingers. I'm just going to finish with my fourth one. And I'm going to go for a really, really simple one for some people, but I realize that is a blessing that lots of people struggle with, is I'm thankful for every plate of food that I've ever eaten. I do some work in Rwanda with charity organizations where young people are struggling with food poverty. So I'm going to say the final one I'm going to count as my blessing today is actually every plate of food I've ever had.
That's beautiful. For me, I'm going to categorize number 4 as the West Midlands. And that's a very broad thing, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that thank you to the West Midlands for believing me and giving me so many opportunities. And hopefully along the way, I've grasped those opportunities. And I think, how I met you, this year has been the best year of my life because it's allowed me to go out to meet so many inspiring people. And I have to say, you did inspire me.
Oh,
and, for young people, they don't get the right press at times. But so to the West Midlands for giving me so many different roles, but this role as High Sheriff, hopefully I've gone out and let people know what a High Sheriff is and tried to modernise the role and to communicate with people. So this opportunity to be a very small part of a population of 3 million people, it's been an honour and a privilege to have had this role.
Wow. And I'm honoured to be in this space with you and, exchanging gratitude here. And we're about to land in the end of this podcast. And we love to have an opportunity for you to share a story you'd want to tell or to say something to someone. And it might be you want to share something with me, or you might want to look down the camera there and speak to every person who's going to watch this video on YouTube. But what would be something you'd want to share, a story you'd want to tell, or a word of inspiration you'd want to give?
Sure. I think people always think their life isn't right or it's not perfect or whatever. I think the thing to reassure people is never worry about what's happened in the past. We're not history teachers. We don't have to talk about the past. But what you can do is you can learn from all those experiences and all those little bumps and to be yourself, and that you will, with the right mindset and with the love and support of your family, you're able to move forward. So many people almost feel hemorrhaged by what's happened in the past. Eventually, your world, your life will get better, but use the negative experiences and turn them into positive experiences. Don't be embarrassed, ashamed, whatever's happened in the past. Just look forward and make the most of your opportunities.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And at this point, I often ask the last question, but I think before the last question, I want to say something to you.
Okay.
I think for me, often feel like a baby CEO. At this moment in time, I'm 30 years old, and I've been a CEO since I was about 27, 28 years old. And, often when we journey with Guardian Borders, you go through this journey where you go from one day seeing a life transformed with a young person to the next day being behind finances and numbers, and
Sure.
and you go through this journey of growing to be a business leader, and I love it, and it's a privilege, and I'm grateful, but sometimes it's hard. And for me today, I want to thank you personally for inspiring me as I continue to lead others as a baby CEO, as I call myself, to pursue peace and arrive at greater levels of peace, to know that actually I can step forwards, that from everything that I've gone through in my life, that it continues to be part of my story. And actually there's always, I say it to other people, but I'm saying it to myself, and you've reminded me to look in the mirror today that there's power in my story, and that I can overcome every hardship because I'm journeying something that I'm passionate about.
Yeah,
So thank you.
listen, passion is free. There aren't many things in life that are free, but passion, and I suppose that the other thing I would flick back on you is that there is no right or wrong age to be a business owner. Do it when you're ready. And I'm at the other end of my business career, but I am not the real deal. I've still got loads of things that I need to improve on. Life is a big learning journey. So, as you call yourself baby CEO, I would say that I'm a CEO in transition, that I'm learning the role. And I think that if you have that outlook on life, you will always get there. It's better to remain humble and to remain hungry and passionate. And I think if you take those into everything you do, you'll have a mighty fine life. And most importantly, you'll make real impact to people who need it. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. And I think I thank God for every journey that I've been on in my life. And it's exciting what's ahead of us. So the final question we ask everyone as we wrap up, Doug, what is the pursuit of peace for you?
The pursuit of peace for me is to try and influence as many people as possible to do charitable and good things in our backyard, in our community. I've said it so many times, but help somebody else. Use what you've got to help and influence other people. And, we won't talk about it now, but, I'm just starting my next huge national project. And for those who can see it, we're going to build a respite village for children in Staffordshire. So it's called Kids Village. And what we're going to do is we're going to create the UK's first respite holiday village, which will be very magical and very Willy Wonka-esque. So just for me, the pursuit of peace is making sure that others are all right.
Amazing. That's so powerful. And thank you so much for continuing to sow into lives. So, Doug, thank you for being on the Pursuit of Peace podcast. It's been a pleasure having you here on season 2.
Thank you, and keep up the great work.
Thank you so much.